Anyway, now let's get to Vladimir Putin. Okay?
Steps in the push to end this war in Ukraine. The White House says President Trump again spoke with Russia's Vladimir Putin yesterday in what the Kremlin says was a 40-minute phone call. Now, that came after Ukraine's President Zelensky visited the White House yesterday along with key European allies. The group got the president to agree to security guarantees for Ukraine. Nancy Cordes is at the White House. Good morning, Nancy. We understand there is an effort now to have Putin and Zelensky meet face-to-face. Do you really think that's going to happen anytime soon?
I think this is the greatest chance we've seen so far, Gail. Good morning. During that call with the Russian president, President Trump worked to arrange this meeting between Putin and Zelensky, which the German chancellor told reporters could happen within the next 2 weeks. This would be the first meeting between these two leaders since the war began 3.5 years ago. And a Russian spokesperson, though, would only say that high-level talks would take place and did not confirm that Putin himself would be involved.
And I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out.
5 hours of meetings between President Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and European leaders yielded two key results. First, a promise from President Trump that the U.S. will help provide security guarantees designed to protect a post-war Ukraine from future invasions by Russia.
The other material outcome was the agreement that will now be a bilateral agreement between President Putin and President Zelensky.
That was British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, one of 7 European power players who all flew into D.C. in a show of support for Zelensky.
And thank you very much for your efforts.
After Trump appeared to find common cause with Putin last week following their summit in Alaska.
We had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to.
In a revealing hot mic moment yesterday, Trump seemed to suggest to French President Emmanuel Macron that Putin would end the war as a favor to him.
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand? I think as crazy as it sounds.
Trump did agree with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen that the return of an estimated 20,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped by Russia at the start of the war should be a top priority.
Every single child has to go back to its family.
But Trump remained lukewarm Monday on the need for a ceasefire, even as the Europeans insisted there must be an immediate end to Russia's.
I guess, if anything, America is consistent, at least now, where America's consistent. They hate ceasefires, and they love regional powers absolutely eviscerating their neighbors or even the occupied peoples that they are the belligerent occupier over. You know, that's just like, that's who we are. And it's in broad display. We have no investment or interest in peace. Permanent state of war is actually what floats the boats. So, sorry, some kids are going to die. You know, we just hate children. We just hate children, and we love seeing them get executed by weapons, drones, and things like that. Also, another thing that we hate here in the United States of America, of course, is international law. That's another thing. You know, it's great. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. Appeasement sucks. I mean, they're not even doing appeasement, to be fair. Like, and we say appeasement, but also there is no real alternative to dealing with Putin at this stage. He has, through a brutal occupation, been able to militarily overtake pieces of Ukraine, 20% of Ukrainian territory, by force, while simultaneously avoiding the worst impacts of sanctions and also taking out the Ukrainian military piece by piece, even though they're armed by every Western nation. They tried it. The Western nations tried it. Maybe they could have tried harder. I think potentially. I think, like, when I go back with hindsight 2020 goggles, which ironically enough wasn't hindsight at the time because I said it at the time as well, I would say that, like, big push early on, and then immediately packing it up when Ukraine had maximum leverage was the best possible option. Before the invasion of Russia, the obviously even better option would have been to abide by the Minsk agreements with like international authorities like coming in to make sure that both parties were abiding by those agreements. That would have obviously been the best option, which is another thing that I also advocated for early on. But none of those things happened. And instead, Western powers, I think, thought that they would be able to destroy Russia. They thought that they would be able to cripple Russia's military, and they thought that they would be able to destroy the Russian economy. And I think it was an abject failure. This is one of the instances where very clearly America was on the right side of this conflict for the wrong reasons. And because they were on the right side of the conflict for wrong reasons, because their reasons were not like the true emancipation of the true emancipation of the freedom of Ukrainians to like maintain some semblance of Ukrainian sovereignty to the best of their ability. I think, it just was an abject failure, demonstrably so. And the entire time, over the course of the past 3 years, they just kept saying, no, it's not a failure. This is actually really good. This is actually really good. They silenced anyone that said, hey, this doesn't look good, actually. This looks really bad. And it's heading in an even worse direction. Do you really think the top military minds thought Ukraine was going to take down Moscow? They knew all along. I think there were definitely people who, it doesn't really matter what they genuinely think, right? Because what matters is what they did. Whether it was indecent or genuine, whether it was cynical or a genuine a feeling that Ukraine would be able to push back the Russian forces ultimately is inconsequential, because what is consequential is what has happened thus far. And what has happened thus far is Russia's been able to push in to Ukraine. Now, were there some military minds that thought that they would be able to overwhelm the Russian forces or atrophy the Russian forces? Certainly. I think there were definitely people that thought that, for sure. Were there some people who didn't give a shit and thought, even if the Russian military is not successfully dismantled, it still doesn't matter, because we're sending weapons, a steady flow of older weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine has become a testing ground for new weapons like drone warfare, things of that nature. It's a laboratory, basically, for defensive and offensive capabilities. That's fantastic for the military-industrial complex. Yeah, I think that win or lose, those guys always win, because those guys always win in a permanent state of war. And a permanent state of war is really bad for, obviously, the captive civilian population. It's really bad for the Ukrainians that were displaced, really bad for the Ukrainians that had to run away from their homes and now had to move out of the country. It's really bad for the Ukrainians that remain in the country that don't want to get forcibly drafted and have to just like avoid the authorities. It is, however, very good for American weapons manufacturers overall.
Daily bombings before serious peace talks can begin.
I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put...
Let's be real. Everyone thought Russia would pack up Ukraine in like 3 weeks when the invasion began. The real big weapons transfer started when they pushed the Russians back, when the resistance was stiffer than expected. Oh, for sure. I think that was a big miscalculation from Putin. And I think it's ultimately cope that people say, oh, no, Putin always just wanted Eastern territory. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. They just did not have, they literally did not have the established, they were not able to establish air superiority as quickly as they thought they would. And when they were unable to establish air superiority, And the Ukrainian anti-aircraft defenses actually proved to be a much more powerful defensive capability than they thought, than they had miscalculated. They were unable to create supply lines that could go to the front lines. They just were not able to do so. So they had to retreat back to the eastern Ukrainian territories and make gains in the ways that they have so far and basically harden their position. It's still worse than before the invasion because now 20% of Ukraine is acquired by Russia as annexed territory. Russian gains are minimal. You overestimate Russian gains and underestimate the state of the Russian economy. I don't think Russian gains are minimal. They literally have a complete occupation of 20% of Ukraine. The defensive capabilities of Ukraine have diminished spectacularly because they don't have the manpower. That's crazy. They gained 1% since 2022. Chatter, there is no world in which an irredentist regional power overtaking 20% of a neighboring state whose entire national project has been independence from said irredentist power is a fucking marginal victory. What are you talking about? Yeah, he wanted all of it and he only got 20%. If that's what you're saying, fair is fair, but like that's still a major defeat for America and the Western forces in general. Most of the land was taken before the war in 2014. No, that's not true. The only one winning from this is China. I think China is winning from this, but China is probably still one of the more reasonable parties to involve in this process. But also the ones winning from this are American oil and gas industry giants that have been able to forcibly enter the European market by saying, like, you can't get all your energy from Russia anymore. You have to get it from us. And also the military industrial complex that's just like able to consistently expand their budgets year over year. Not only that, but now we have an even more indecent force than the Raytheons and the Lockheed Martins and the Northrop Grummons and the Boeings of the world. Now we have the Palantirs and the Andurils of the world, Silicon Valley tech CEOs that are also getting into this sector because they know this is the best possible way to make billions of fucking dollars with very little oversight. It's just unlimited free money. What is this? Occupation time lapse since 2022 to 2025 mapping? What is this? What is this music, bro? This is so funny. Why is the music from... Why is the audio, like, filmed from a phone camera off of a TV or something? Here, I got something better. Okay. Here. Here, this is better. That's better, I think. Yeah, Red Alert music is better. What is happening with this line over here? Not beating the pro-Russia allegations. I mean, this is it's how you take it. Play Moscow by Genghis Khan. Anyway, look, there's 1224 active pushes here. This is the worst possible video we could have ever seen. This is 1% since 2022 is based on Russians claiming they got most of Ukraine on a map with a massive operation in the first days of the war. They were not real gains. It was just Russian troops walking in and walking back once the PR was done. Chat, we're watching Russians taking territory. It's nonfiction historical fact. It isn't pro-Russian. I know. People don't. They just have lost the capacity to look at this as like anything but just like taking a side on this. Like, it's just, I'm not. My side is not on Russian territorial expansion. I don't agree with what they're doing. I think it's unconscionable and it's unjustifiable. It's incredibly stupid to assume that I'm like, or to cynically claim that I'm like actually in favor of this or whatever. It's not the case. Anyway, regarding the war's expectations, Russian intelligence had convinced Putin that Ukraine would buckle after a show of force, multi-axis invasion within 2 months max. They did not prepare for a war. They prepared for a parade. This is why it took months to regain their footing and only stabilize the front line at the end of 2022. Wait, didn't Ukraine do a big push north into Russia? Was that propaganda? Yeah, it's right here. Kursk. The Kursk counteroffensive. That's it. They took this little blip here. Which, from what I understand, they were able to, Russians sent in North Korean troops as well in that process to do interior security. But at the same time, you're saying Ukraine should be giving him the fight. The square isn't circling. No, I'm saying that America has lost this conflict. That's it. I don't think it's the moral thing. And I think that eventually Ukrainians will continue insurgency and make it costly to do permanent annexation. Okay? I think that going forward, this is not going to be state versus state warfare, and instead it's going to look like an insurgency if there is if there is a serious interest in doing so, which I suspect there is. Okay? Some of the most radical elements within the Ukrainian defense forces is most likely going to engage in covert operations, and America will probably still do, like, they'll still beef up that aspect of it. But I think that probably is a sad but still better outcome than continuing the military expansion of Russian forces pushing inch by inch into Ukrainian territory, because every inch that they take of Ukrainian territory comes with a major cost. But at a certain point, people do have to ask, like, why was I so misguided about my understanding of this situation? Why was I so misguided? Like, because someone, if you were of the mindset that for the past 3 years, like, Ukraine is doing it, they're killing it, they're gonna fucking push the Russian forces out any moment now, the counteroffensive is imminent, like, you have to ask yourself, like, where did I arrive at this information? Where did I arrive at this conclusion? I do think that ultimately, while Ukrainians put up a brave fight for every piece of land that the Russians still forcibly overtook, like an honest and sober assessment of what was actually unfolding would have been, I think, would have been better for the people overall. Who misled you? Why were you misled?
Pressure on Russia.
The group did not discuss what should happen to the 20% of Ukrainian territory that is currently controlled by Russian forces. Zelensky said that's a matter he'll only hash out with Putin himself.
All the sensitive things, territorial, etc., we will discuss on the level of leaders during trilateral meeting.
And so now the pressure is on Putin to accept and attend this meeting. He has always had a long list of demands that he's...
Bro, it's not even our conflict. This is Putin's war, similar to the war in Gaza is Netanyahu's war. We didn't necessarily win or lose because it's truly not our fight. This is American cope, for the record. It's especially ridiculous to say this about Benjamin Netanyahu's war. There is no Israel without American military intervention. Okay, that's number one. At least in Ukraine, we were functionally on the right side, the side that was being invaded unjustifiably. But in Israel, we are completely on the wrong side. In Israel, we're on the Russian side, basically, for Israel against the Palestinian population. And also, what Israel's doing is not a war anyway. Not only is it not Benjamin Netanyahu's war, it's not even a war at all. It's just genocide. And we are allowing it to happen, and we're giving Israel the weapons to do so every step of the way. And we're defending Israel every step of the way against retaliation from other regional actors.
Said needed to be met before he would sit down with Zelensky. But he told Trump on Friday he was open to it. So the world will be watching Vlad to see if he follows through.
All right, Nancy, thank you very much.
New Russian strikes on Ukraine, the largest aerial assault since July, and then just a few minutes ago, Moscow refused to commit to a meeting between Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
How was America lost? Russia and Ukraine have lost, not the West? What do you mean? Like, America lost in the sense that, like, they wanted the battle lines to look different. They wanted Vladimir Putin to be coming back to the United States of America begging for an end to the sanctions and giving up Ukrainian territory back to Ukraine, that Ukraine could just like have play a formative role and become a NATO enclave. None of those things are happening. And instead, we're currently trying to basically we're currently trying to rewrite the conversation in a way that is like palatable for American audiences to make it seem like, well, we just got to give up Ukrainian territory. Sorry, sucks to suck. Because the reality of the matter is we have the terms and conditions of this ceasefire is going to be dictated by the battle lines, and the battle lines are not favoring Ukraine at all. The front lines do not favor Ukraine at all in this process. I feel like you're inferring a bit much. I don't think USA cared about this that much at all. It's like saying the American government didn't care about Afghanistan and we didn't take an L in Afghanistan after 20 years of occupation and then like giving the country back to the Taliban. Yeah, technically for the military industrial complex, Afghanistan was amazing. But America ostensibly took an L there. Same with Vietnam. America took an L there as well. That's it. We dumped billions and billions of dollars there instead of working on our own infrastructure, instead of like feeding the hungry, you know, and rebuilding our roads and hardening our infrastructure against natural disasters that increase in magnitude and frequency every year. You're basically making it seem like that all was actually, you know, it was great. It was awesome. Do you think that that was awesome? This seems like a PR project for U.S. presidents rather than some big realpolitik play. No, it's not a PR project for U.S. presidents at all. And even if it was just simply a PR project for U.S. presidents, don't you think that it was still a spectacular failure? I don't think people understand. You'll come back to this moment. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we will come back to this moment and reflect on what took place, because I think this is the real multipolarity is here moment. Okay. We've been saying it over and over again. But like, this is it. You know? This is it. Because America is already casting aside whatever like soft power initiatives it had, and it's hardening its positions. But this is not a soft power thing. This is a hard power situation. America gave, a fuck ton of weapons to Ukraine with the hopes that Ukraine would be able to at least like push Russian forces out and still continue to engage in unlimited conflict so that the weapons would still flow into Ukraine. That's still going to be good for the American military industrial complex budgets. But they would be able to show that they were, destroying the Russian military and that Russia couldn't make any territorial acquisitions. And like, even in the process of holding them back, you would still need an endless flow of weapons. But like, the reason why you're seeing Donald Trump basically try to wash his hands over this process without taking any ownership over it is because he sees the writing on the wall, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's part of it is, of course, part of the negotiations process is obviously clouded with his own personal closeness to Vladimir Putin. But in the past, I think like the theory was America as the world police, as the singular hegemonic power, was able to keep other regional powers at bay, even regional powers that are foreign adversaries. Okay? With Ukraine, they failed to do so. And I think because with Ukraine they failed to do so, they're allowing Israel to do whatever the fuck it wants to do and allowing Israel to also basically steer American foreign policy in the Middle East, in that region, in whichever direction they see fit. And it is becoming increasingly belligerent for that reason. It's kind of like a tune-up fight. A fighter gets beaten up, concussed, and your prize fighter has to go back and your prize fighter has to go back in the ring at some point. And in that process, you do a tune-up fight. You make your fighter regain its confidence by fighting an opponent that is much easier to defeat. And for American foreign policy, this is relatively reductive the way I'm explaining it, but for American foreign policy, they see like what Israel's doing in that area as almost like a tune-up fight, because all of the quote-unquote enemies are non-state actors and militia movements, that are born out of occupied territories or born in nations that are under the banner of American security, like Lebanon. I'm talking about Hezbollah, or out of nations that are mired in conflict because of Western intervention as well, like Yemen. Very poor nations. So, of course, it looks very different.
But stopping short of ruling out any further talks. Now, the meeting was supposed to be one of the major takeaways, if not the major takeaway from the historic White House summit yesterday. President Trump even posted that he's working on setting up that bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. But again, just a few minutes ago, the Kremlin said it is only prepared to, quote, raise the level of the delegation it sends to meetings with Ukraine. And that really is the key this morning, to try to determine what the concrete takeaways were from what were very visible.
But people say China is seen as cutting out on Ukraine and smiling real wide at Taiwan is so crazy, because the greatest opportunity for China to do anything to Taiwan militarily, if they had the ambition to do so, would have been when America was too busy with the initial stages of Israel's genocide. Okay? There have been a million opportunities, and I said this over and over again at the time. No, for China, as far as like Taiwan unification goes, they just sit and wait. They don't have to do shit. Look at what America is doing. Look at what Trump is doing at the global stage. All they have to do is say, oh, we're brothers. What do you mean? You speak the same language I do. We come from the same culture. What do you want, these fucking Westoids to run your country maybe like 5 years later? And I think, yeah, the most ideal position for China is to just sit back and wait. They don't need to do shit. Donald Trump is over here talking about hitting Taiwan with tariffs. And you're like, oh no, China is really excited to militarily overtake Taiwan. They don't have to do shit. Donald Trump is the great nation builder for China. That's it. That's it. Just sit it out and just constantly point to what America's doing and go, are you guys seeing this? That's all you need to do. That's all you need to do. It's kind of like with my haters too, when I just like let them fucking scream into the void over and over again. And I just like kick back and I go, do you see how crazy these people are? And then they inevitably fucking in their hysteria, in their endless hysteria, they show their true ambitions. Trump is the great nation builder for China is one of the most important takes. Okay.
Visibly good feelings at this White House summit yesterday between President Trump, President Zelensky, and all these key European leaders you're seeing on the screen right now. They left with good feelings. The question this morning now is, will they get good results? Let's go right to CNN's Elena Trine at the White House for the latest. The president continues to say he's setting up the meeting. The Russians continue to throw a little bit of cold water on that, Elena.
Yeah, I mean, it was very clear heading into yesterday, John, that was the goal for the president specifically, President Trump, I should say. He wanted to be able to get another meeting on the books that included Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sitting down in the same room. And you saw him, you know, he did have a 40-minute phone call yesterday in the Oval Office with the Russian leader. He actually paused his ongoing meeting with the 7 European leaders and Zelensky taking place at the White House to have that conversation with Putin. And then I talked to a White House official who told me he then invited that group back in, the European leaders and Zelensky, to the Oval Office after he wrapped that call to fill them in on what was discussed. And then, of course, we saw his Truth Social post saying that he is making arrangements for a bilateral meeting first between Zelensky and Putin, and then hopefully a trilateral meeting after that. But you're exactly right. There's a lot of skepticism of whether that is actually possible, when it could take place, where it would take place, but if the Russians are even willing to agree to that. And I think the key thing here is we're hearing them throw cold water on this idea. I remind you that Putin does not view Zelensky as his equal. You know, he was the one who started the war that invaded Ukraine illegally, and that's really been a problem throughout this entire time. However, there's also not just the president here, but a lot of other top advisors to him are telling him that they believe that the only way to get this solved and to end the war is to have the two of them sit down in the same room and discuss this. And that's kind of what we heard from Bessent this morning when he was on CNBC. Take a listen.
He invited President Putin to land that the Russians used to own. He displayed a huge amount of military hardware and then did a flyover. It was kind of like inviting your uncontrollable neighbor to your house and showing him your gun case. And my strong belief is that there will be a bilateral meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky. And this
is, again, unimaginable cope, dude. God damn, this is such terrifying cope. No one has the capacity to be honest about the situation that is happening. Okay? So they have to just be like, no, 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 we still hold the cards. I promise we still hold the cards. Like, I'll be honest with you. I don't even know what the liberal position is here. Like, they are attacking Trump and saying, like, no, Trump is not doing a good job, which is true. He's not, because it's fucking Trump, okay? But also at the same time, there's people that they have, like John Bolton on, who are just constantly saying, like, no, you don't understand. Trump is supposed to be, like, way more aggressive with Vladimir Putin, which is, I guess that part is true. Even as a posturing thing, even as like the negotiations are unfolding. But like, if we don't have leverage, or if the leverage that we have in our hands, at our disposal, is like the nuclear option that will do more harm to us and might not actually work in the long run, then what is the alternative? Like, I don't understand, because like the positions are clear. If the problems that the Ukrainian defense are facing is a lack of manpower, then you need to make up for that with manpower. So what do? Either deport Ukrainian men that are of conscription age back to Ukraine to be forced into the front lines after training, with no guarantee that that will actually even succeed in pushing back the Russian forces anyway. It probably would help, but there's no maximum guarantee. There's no guarantee that it's going to work. Okay. You can't send in foreign troops. You can't send in foreign troops because foreign troops that are a part of NATO would then trigger Article 5, and it would be impossible to I think, domestically present that as the viable option. I don't even know if fucking Poland would be able to justify doing that, even if they were to say, all right, we're not going to trigger Article 5. And we're going to open ourselves up to Russian retaliation. And on the sanctions side, because Article 5 is also obviously, nukes. That's what it leads to. That's the reason why there hasn't been a no-fly zone that was like established over Ukraine, because that would require foreign air forces to shoot down Russian planes, which would mean a foreign nation's military that is either a nuclear armed nation or a foreign nation that's under the nuclear security arrangement like NATO, is now going to war with Russia. So then all of a sudden it's like nukes are flying back and forth. So that's, again, a maximalist position that America was never entertaining at all. And on the sanctions side, you have options to punish the secondary markets that have been developed to allow Russian energy to enter Europe and allow Russian energy to make its way somehow to all these other countries. But if you were to try to sanction like India, then you're cooking your India-China plan, because India is supposed to be an incredibly important country for our goals of decoupling the rest of the regional partners over there from China, which, again, has not seen a lot of success anyway. So I just don't see any viable alternative here that doesn't take this conflict to its inevitable inevitable nuclear holocaust or a sanctions package that ends up hurting America more and destroys what remains of its destroys what remains of its foreign policy goals against China. No, you dismiss Trump, bro, talking to Putin to give up Moscow. That's true. Trump is going to make Trump and Putin are such great friends that he's actually going to tell Putin what's what, and then Vladipoo is going to fucking drop. Vladipoo's going to drop the Kremlin. Yeah. He's going to give up Moscow He's gonna give Moscow to America. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi in India for the first time in 3 years. Why this visit matters. As Wang emphasized, China and India should regard each other as partners and opportunities rather than rivals or threats. This shows the improved relationship. India reaffirmed its official commitment on One China principle, and Taiwan is part of China. This is very important. Border talks mechanism goes well. Direct flights will be resumed soon. Wang will then call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his residence today. India has recognized Taiwan as a part of China for decades. On December 1949, the Indian government officially recognized the government of the government of China, the People's Republic of China, as the sole and legitimate representative of China, so did America for the record, and cut ties with their former government of the ROC, which lost the Chinese Civil War and fled to Taiwan Island. Murtaza Hussain writes, if India affirms Chinese policy on Taiwan and Russia and China are aligned, it doesn't seem that there is any plausible anti-China coalition that the U.S. is capable of cobbling together in Eurasia. Roted. My brain is so busted.
The only way to end this conflict is to get the two sides talking.
I mean, what a way to describe Vladimir Putin coming to American soil. Hearing the Treasury Secretary say it's like inviting your uncontrollable neighbor to your house and showing them your gun case. So all to say, though, you could hear Bessent there adding that he...
the reason why I say is fucking cope is because, you let Vladimir Putin, the leader of a foreign adversary, into U.S. territory. You rolled out the red carpet, and you said that you were really close and personal besties with him. And then you turned around and you said, well, we are... I mean, you basically gave him everything he wanted. You gave him a good PR opportunity. You gave him everything he wanted. The idea that he saw our weapons and got scared is such cope.
Believes this is the only way to get Putin and Zelensky in the same room and try to end the war by getting the two sides to talk. But one other thing, John, before we go, I just want to reiterate to you what we heard from a number of European leaders yesterday about being one of the most important things to come out of this summit. And that was having the United States and having President Donald Trump himself saying he wants to help when it comes to security guarantees for Ukraine. A lot of them, Starmer, Mark Rutte, the UK Prime Minister and the NATO Secretary General, all saying that was a breakthrough from Monday.
Again, that one of the other concrete takeaway were the discussions about security talks. Again, we're waiting to see what develops. Oftentimes with meetings, they're not happening until they are. So we'll just have to wait and see. Elena Trine, thank you very much. Kate?
It's a great point. And even as the Kremlin is refusing to commit right now to a meeting between Vladimir Putin and Zelensky, security guarantees, as John was just saying, are at the center of talks for top European leaders still today. The French president and the British prime minister are leading talks this morning for the 30 nations who are part of what they call and consider themselves the coalition of the willing. CNN's Claire Sebastian's in London. She's been tracking this one for us. And what are you learning about what's coming out of this now, another round of meetings today?
Well, look, I think what's clear, Kate, is there is a very long road ahead to determine exactly how to deter future Russian aggression. There were a lot of positive noises coming out of the White House meeting yesterday. It is not nothing at all that the U.S. is now openly embracing the idea of being somehow involved in these security guarantees, although we don't know exactly how as of yet. This is something that European leaders have been pushing for all along. So listen to the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer talking about this in a video he posted today.
Breakthrough when it comes to security guarantees, with now the coalition of willing countries, that's the 30 or so countries that we've been coordinating for some months on security guarantees, now working with the US at pace to work up those security guarantees. These guarantees will ensure that if there is a peace, if there is a deal, then we hold to it and there isn't further conflict.
So what do we mean by security guarantees? Well, it could be a number of different things. The French President Emmanuel Macron coming out of the White House yesterday talking about, no limits on Ukraine's armed forces. Russia, of course, has demanded in the past that there should be limits on the size of Ukraine's army, which is now the second biggest in Europe after Russia's. He talked about reassurance forces in the land air and sea. There are certain countries, for example, the UK, that have already said they might be willing to put boots on the ground. And President Trump didn't explicitly rule out US peacekeepers being involved in the Oval Office meeting yesterday, though he was pretty vague about that. So the work continues. There's also a European Council meeting this morning, EU heads of state. Another very important frenzied day of diplomacy here in Europe. Kate?
Sure does seem it. Claire, thank you so much for following it for us. John.
All right, with us now is Congressman Mike Quigley from Illinois, a Democrat and the co-chair of the Congressional Ukraine Caucus. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. The news we heard just a few minutes ago, the Kremlin, Sergei Lavrov, really a senior Kremlin official, refusing to commit to the bilateral meeting between Vladimir Putin and President Zelensky. What is that refusal, at least as of now, what does that tell you?
The Chancellor of Germany was right. Unless there's a ceasefire forced upon Putin, there's not going to be any other meetings. And if there are meetings, what will they actually contribute? The fact of the matter is they're missing the point here. Putin understands strength, not talks, not repercussions put off concessions made before negotiations begin. We're honestly seeing the beginning of a new era. I guess you'd call it the Trump doctrine. The U.S. will be tough until it's not, and we will reward invaders of a sovereign democratic country with land, and we won't hold that person responsible for the war crimes. He doesn't understand weakness. He understands strength, and we're not even using the assets we have toward that end.
You did hear the British Prime Minister call it a
new Black Myth Wukong, new Black Myth title officially unveiled today. Oh, hell yeah. Well, I'll look at Gamescom updates later, okay? Some of the best moments.
Breakthrough in terms of the discussions on security guarantees. Do you think security guarantees after some kind of a deal would provide Ukraine with some of the safety that they feel like they need?
I guess I wouldn't blame Ukraine to never trust this unless it means NATO, right? They go back to Budapest. We're reminding ourselves that Putin has never kept a promise in East.
Brother, I don't even understand what security guarantees Vladimir Putin would be on board with. I thought his positions were completely untenable and insane. His maximalist positions are Ukraine doesn't get to have a standing army. Like he's pulling an Israel take on a whole ass sovereign nation where he was like, give me territories, including areas that I haven't even fucking militarily taken over yet. Ukraine doesn't get to have a standing military, basically. No, not even like Western security cooperation. They're talking no security in Ukraine. It doesn't make sense. What is this guy saying? Russia attacks for land is wrong. Don't fall for this BS. Why are people complicating this whole shit? What is this? End the war, stop the encroachment, let Ukraine stay neutral, and this shit is over. No more unnecessary death. Thank you for saying this. No, completely disagree. The scenarios are not realistic. He doesn't understand this because his analysis is bad. That's what it boils down to. How is Ukraine sovereign after being a victim of U.S. intervention for more than 11 years? I mean, no one in here is saying Ukraine is currently a sovereign nation. It's just stuck between Western forces and Western influence and Russia. The difference, of course, is that Russia is doing Russia shit, and Russia's influence is militarily dominating and taking over swaths of land and killing people. Western influences, on the other hand, are soft power, civil society organizations, and intervention of different sorts, taking advantage of like whatever instability that already existed in a volatile nation beforehand. And now Western forces are understandably treated by Ukrainians as like the fucking allies that are trying to save them. Even if their ambitions, even if the Western forces and their ambitions are not actually decent at all, it's not about the preservation of Ukrainian sovereignty or saving Ukraine. It's just that is the analysis from people because one side is killing them. That's it. The other side is arming them. Yes, concede to Putin, terminate the deaths. That's what Trump can do. Okay, but like, why are you yelling at me? Because I'm saying that Trump has no cards here. That is my point. Like, that's what I've been saying. I'm saying Trump does not have a fucking another option here. And all of this back and forth is simply about not making America feel too bad about this process. To just basically give all of the responsibility to like Obama or Joe Biden, and to say it was their war, it was not my war. I'm just ending it. I'm just ending it because there's too much death. That's precisely what he's been communicating over and over and over again. That's what he's saying, because he wants to. He realizes that they don't have any additional options. Like, I mean, in the process, they'll still keep giving weapons to Ukraine. Make no mistake. Clearly, even in this back and forth deal that they're doing, $100 billion weapons deal is going to be signed in this process. $100 billion coming from European nations and whatnot to spend directly on American weapons that will go to Ukrainian hands. So clearly, you know, the weapons manufacturers are still doing great. I don't know what that means. I don't know how they are actually conceding to the fucking demands of Russia ultimately. So I don't even know what the liberals are saying here in their analysis.
Eastern Europe, and he never will. To them, I guess I understand the Ukrainians to believe that here we are going to reward Putin for his land acquisitions, and we'll probably see Putin rebuild his army, rebuild his economy, wait another year or two, and then go and finish the job. If anything, Ukraine has earned the...
Like, if these guys are... if Ukraine is like, please ceasefire now, and Russia is the one that's saying no ceasefire, okay, we're just going to keep pushing, and liberals are like, wow, Donald Trump is going to do a ceasefire. It's really fucked up because this will only help Russia. It's like, what are you doing? What are you saying? Why don't you go fight then? Why don't you go and defend Ukraine? You know? Well, what is this? What is this argument? Trump is not even saying he's going to do a ceasefire because Putin doesn't want one. So what are we talking about? Who is this for? I don't understand. I don't know. It just like doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
The right to be in NATO. They have fought on the front lines of democracy. All the reasons we fought the Second World War and formed the United Nations, we're now saying, gee, I hope he shows up, and gee, maybe we can get these concessions, and maybe we can get guarantees. I was on your program at the start of the war. We were asked, what would constitute victory for Ukraine? It had to do with rebuilding Ukraine, getting their territory back, holding Putin accountable, and security guarantees, meaning NATO. Maybe we get one out of those four. No one can call that a victory. It's really appeasement. We want peace, and not the worst kind of appeasement.
How much U.S. involvement would you support in some of these security guarantees?
We have to use our assets. The first thing we have to do is seize the frozen Russian assets that are in Europe, 300 billion, 5 to 8 roughly in the United States, and use that to help Ukraine defend itself. And we have to put the sanctions in place, which, by the way...
Okay. The same UN you ignoring the Israel shit. Oh, I haven't even gotten to the ultimate hypocrisy here, of course. Everything that they're talking about with Russia is just like a major role reversal with Israel because they fucking love Israel doing worse shit than even Russia. And Russia's doing plenty of horrifying shit to begin with. You know, Israel's doing a genocide. It's not even a fucking war. But when they talk about like the asset seizure, the frozen assets, $300 billion in frozen assets that belong to like Russian oligarchs and stuff like that, the Russian state. That's also another point of leverage that the American government has, that the Western governments have, as far as like trying to make Russia concede to their side. If they start using those if they start seizing the assets and then using it to arm Ukraine, then you're just dumping a bunch of weapons back. It's good for, again, Raytheon and all of those guys, but you're dumping a bunch of weapons to a military force that doesn't have the manpower to hold the weapons. They just don't have people. So how are you going to make up for the lack of manpower? Okay. And in the process, you're basically also giving up 1 point of leverage that you could have in terms of like being like, hey, if you fucking pull back from Ukraine, we'll give you $300 billion back, which a lot of liberals are going to get mad at anyway. And from what I understand, I thought European countries had already decided that they are using some of these Russian assets anyway that were frozen to purchase these weapons. And I suspect they will continue to do so.
Republicans and Democrats solidly agree on. It's rare that we see that happen. If you want something like guarantees and you want a uniformity there, it has to come with strength. You know, here I am, the liberal Democrat from Chicago, but you know, the lessons from 19.
So I remember yesterday when you said there wasn't anything the U.S. can do, but he just listed a bunch that we can. We just don't leverage them. Wait, what? No, he's saying that we can keep giving unlimited weapons and unlimited money to Ukraine, but he won't recognize the reason why the battle lines look the way that they do, which is a lack of manpower. What do you mean? Yes, we can keep giving Ukraine unlimited weapons. I agree. Let's keep doing it. What is that going to change in the next 5 years? Who's going to shoot the fucking guns? I said this already, and it's not even my assessment. Biden said this too on his way out. Okay. Brandon, Mr. Defender of Ukraine, he did NATO jack, Mr. AUKUS. What did Biden say? On his way out, he told Ukraine, you have to lower your age of conscription. You have to lower the age of the draft. You don't have enough manpower. So in order to do so, you need younger and younger people to go out and fight. That process is long. It's costly. You train these people, okay? You're basically destroying a potential future generation of Ukrainians with no immediate guarantee that this is going to actually change the trajectory of this stalemate. And it's not even a stalemate because like Russia's still pushing, you know? It doesn't make sense. Ukrainian army is like 1 million people. They have a lot of people already. Okay, then I guess every Ukrainian that is reported on some of the major issues that they're facing is just lying. When they say there's a lot of corruption, people literally pay not to go to the front lines. There's a lot of bribery. People are hiding in their homes as well to not get forcibly conscripted. The videos that we see of people just like getting brutally fucking put on a goddamn bus. All of that is a lie. Ukrainians that now 69% of Ukrainians that now want a ceasefire deal with Russia actually are faking it. They don't want that at all. That's also bullshit. Like it's not even, you can't even get away with saying like I'm doing pro-Russian propaganda anymore because then you have to say New York Times is doing pro-Russian propaganda if you're just like doing an accurate reflection of the events. Like even the New York Times and Wall Street Journal are reporting on this stuff at this point. That's how bad that's how bad things have gotten.
'39 are coming back. The voices of 39 are coming back, weak and strong. Chamberlain coming back saying, you know, some sort of land swap, some sort of appeasement gives us peace in our time. That's not what Hitler understood. It's not what Putin understands. I truly want peace. But if you go at it begging and pleading a brutal murderer, it's not going to work.
Congressman Mike Quigley from Illinois, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
President Trump making major progress toward peace and high-stakes talks with Ukrainian President Zelensky and European leaders in the Oval Office yesterday. Look at that picture.
President Trump also confirming a meeting between Russian President Putin and Zelensky is in the works before he hopefully meets them together.
And joining us now on the phone with more details, the President of the United States, the 45th and 47th President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, thanks so much for joining Fox and Friends this morning.
I saw pieces of this convo and it was so ass. Oh my Lord. It is, I would say you're not ready for this. It's going to be worse than your expectations. Whatever you were expecting, this is going to look like, I promise you, it's going to be worse.
Good
Okay,
morning.
get ready.
That's quite a crew. That's quite a crew.
Well, Mr. President, the whole world was watching yesterday as you got leaders from the European Union, NATO, as well, from all over the world. How did you get them to Washington, to the Oval?
Let me tell you how. Okay? Let me tell you why they came. Because last time Zelensky came by himself, it turned into a spectacular failure. Okay? So this time, the European allies, who are also fucking servile to Donald Trump's interests, regardless of what, no matter how insane it is, they came with him so that at least like there would be some semblance of decorum. And they glazed them the entire time, hoping that the dude, the president of the United States, the quote unquote leader of the free world, doesn't turn around and say something insanely childish in the process. That's it. It's so funny. All of these like incredibly well-educated, supposedly brilliant minds have to literally sit around this perfect portrait of Europe's century of humiliation. EU leaders lined up like school children as Daddy Trump lectures them behind his desk. These guys all know Donald Trump is a fucking moron. Okay? They all know it. They all know Donald Trump is a moron. You think they don't know? Of course they know. And they just have to sit there and go, yes, Mr. President, you're so brilliant, Mr. President. Please tell us more about how Graydon Carter is a pussy and his Vanity Fair parties suck now. Please tell us more about how, mail-in ballots are actually creating fraudulent results, even though you yourself voted by mail. Every fucking election cycle, Mr. President, we will sit in the cuck chair. What can we do? Nothing. They realized that Trump is a very simple guy. Vladimir Putin is nice to Trump and says, I respect you. And Trump believes it, and he will give him a favorable a deal. So they're like, oh, fuck, we got to do the same thing. We just got to brown nose him over and over again, in spite of the reality that, like, they all know he's a fucking moron. They have to sit there when he goes, everybody transgender, and they go, yes, oui, everybody is transgender. You are right, Mr. President.
Office so fast.
Well, I think really they have respect for our country again. A year ago, they wouldn't have.
Yeah, Lowickism. Lowickism is cancerous, Mr. President. Oui.
They wouldn't have even thought about it. Now, we've become the hottest country anywhere in the world. Everybody wants to be here. When I made the call, they came. And they said there's really never been anything like it. You'd have one president or one prime minister, but there's never been, such a group. And these really represent the European nations.
You know what this reminds me of? I don't know if you will get the analogy here, but I feel like I'm seeing something that a lot of people don't see here. It feels to me like when I watch like those hating women podcasts of like these alpha bros, when I see these guys like yelling at women and berating women professionally, I can see how unimaginably insecure they are. But clearly their audiences don't see that. They look at these guys and they go, wow, these guys are so macho. They're so macho. You see the way that they put women in their place. That's how it feels like to me here, where Donald Trump is basically making it seem as though America still has motion around the globe, while simultaneously destroying what remains of America's soft power initiatives. And these kinds of like petty aesthetic, like, oh yeah, we came over and we visited the president personally. He uses that as an opportunity to say, see, I'm so hot right now. America is still so hot because I'm in charge. America wasn't so hot. They were abusing us. They were shitting on us. And it's just, all of these people are literally just playing this role so that you don't fuck up the bag. That's it. I see it, but I do feel like a lot of people can't see that reality. You know what I mean? I feel like people are just looking at this and actually believing what Donald Trump is saying, that like this is a show of force. No, man, this is a show of weakness. It's not a show of force at all. These are countries that have lost their dignity a long time ago, have lost their sovereignty a long time ago. Of course, they're going to come and listen when an American president demands it. It's just that you have no motion with the adversaries any longer. We had a good 30-year run, 40-year run at this point of dominating the planet, and that time is coming to a close, okay?
These people, and they're very good people, and they want to end the war, that horrible war with Ukraine and Russia. It's a horrible war.
It was such a sense of unity, and we all enjoyed watching it because America is on top, and it was on your turf, on your terms. I know yesterday you talked about arranging a meeting to take place in 2 weeks between Putin and Zelensky. Is there an update there?
They still pretend not to have motion over the Israel stuff too. Yeah, that's the other side of this story, which is that we do have maximum motion over Israel, and we don't do anything with it because, you know, it's been a fantastic success. Israel's genocide is going on, and no one can stop it because we don't want it to stop. So great, awesome.
And do you plan to
Big
attend?
W for America and
No,
Israel
I thought
overall.
I'd do first let them meet. You know, they haven't been exactly best friends. They haven't gotten along very well. And I called President Putin yesterday, and I do have a good relationship, but it's, you know, only matters if we get things done. Otherwise, I don't care about the relationship. I do have a good relationship with him, but I want to get things done. You know, I've solved 7 wars. We ended 7 wars. I thought this would be one of the easier ones, and this has turned out to be the toughest one. India, Pakistan, I mean, these were big ones, and also all big ones, and some going for 31, 32 years, one for 35 years. The Congo, think of that, the Congo and Rwanda for 35 years. I got that one done. I got them all done, but this one is the one that is the most difficult, and I thought it would be an easy one. So I hope President Putin is going to be good, and if he's not, it's going to be a rough situation. And I hope that President Zelensky will do what he has to do. He has to show some flexibility also. The thing is a mess. This was started by Joe Biden. This was a war that should have never happened. Millions of people are dead. The country's blown to pieces, Ukraine, and it's a shame. You know, my wife Melania wrote that beautiful note to President Putin about children. The children are devastated. They're taken away from their homes. The whole thing. And this is a war that would have never, ever, ever happened if we had a real president.
So, Mr. President, it's been barely a week since you announced that first meeting in Alaska, and it's just been days since that meeting, and then you had the meeting yesterday. In the course of having these negotiations, what has surprised you the most between Zelensky and Putin in terms of their strength or weakness of their position right now?
Well, I think the fact that maybe they're getting along a little bit better than I thought. Otherwise, I wouldn't have set up the 2 meeting. I would have set up the 3, a trilat. But I think they're doing a little bit better. There's been tremendous bad blood. And again, this was all worked out by an administration that didn't have a clue. And if you remember, they said, well, if you made a minor incursion, that would be okay. That was the end. The whole thing when Biden made that statement. But minor incursion, what does that mean? So I think they're doing okay. I wouldn't say they are ever going to be best friends, but they're doing okay. And we're just going to see. So we're setting up a meeting. I sort of set it up with Putin and Zelensky. And, you know, they're the ones that have to call the shots. We're 7,000 miles away, in all fairness. You know, we've spent through the previous administration $350 billion. Europe has spent a lot also, $100 billion, but it should be reversed if we should have been in for anything. But it wouldn't have happened, so that would have been much better because so many people died. This is the biggest bad situation since World War II.
I think the reason why he's doing I'm the peacekeeper, I'm doing peace also is because like even his base recognizes that like Israel is getting unlimited funds to do unlimited baby murder. So he has to make it seem as though he's keeping up his promises of being like the anti-war president. And the dumbest motherfuckers you know are going to go along with this, okay? The dumbest people, the dumbest people that you know that never left their hometowns, they get all their notes from Facebook, are going to go along with this and be like, what do you mean? Trump is literally doing 6 wars. He ended 6 wars, dude. He's about to end a 7th. Like, what are you, fucking stupid? Shut up. Yeah, the number of wars have gone up to 9. 9 wars now. 69 wars. I've ended 17 wars. I've ended so many wars.
There's been nothing even close.
So, Mr. President, I know you've been doing deals your entire life when it comes to real estate deals, but this was something a little different. The thing that is surprising a lot of people is when it comes to the security guarantees. I know President Putin said no NATO, and you said, you know what, we're just going to take that off the table. But you did get President Putin to agree to NATO-like protections. So tell us about that. What does that entail?
Well, the war really started over NATO and Crimea. And they wanted Crimea back. That was given, not a shot fired by President Obama in perhaps the worst real estate deal I've ever seen. There's been a couple of them. I would say the Gaza Strip was a pretty bad one, too. Given by Israel so they'd have peace. So they gave away a big percentage of their oceanfront property in order to have peace. How did that work out? Not so good. And Crimea is the apple of Ukraine. I mean, it's so beautiful. And Obama gave it away. Nobody ever mentions that. If I ever did that, the fake news would be, they would be writing about me day and night for years. He gave it away. He demanded that they let it go. And Russia came in and took it, just took it like from a candy from a baby. And it was really Obama's, not really, I mean, that was pure and simple, Obama's fault. What a terrible thing he did to that country. And so they lost their heart. They lost the heart and soul of the Ukraine 14 years ago, whatever it might be. And it was so unnecessary to do that. And that's when it really began, when Obama gave it away. And then you had a lot of other events, but you have, tremendous hostility. The people of Ukraine were mortified when that took place. That really began a lot of hatred when they gave it. And they didn't have to. Not a shot was fired. They just took over the most valuable piece and the biggest piece in the sense of, and surrounded on 4 sides by ocean, just a little passage to get you back onto the mainland. The most beautiful piece of property you've ever seen as a real estate developer. I look at it, I said, why the heck did he do that to them? And so there's great hostility, and maybe rightfully so. But one thing was NATO. They went in, they said, we want we want to get Crimea back. This was at the beginning. Now, Putin, in all fairness to him, he made a good deal. He got it from Obama. But they said, we want it back. And that was not exactly well received because it was like 12 years before. That's where Russia has its submarine base. And, that's been there long before Putin. They've been there for a long time. But long before Putin. And the other thing they said is, we want to be a member of NATO. Well, both of those things are impossible. Because, again, long before Putin, it was a no-no by Russia or the Soviet Union or anything you want to call it. Sort of a similar thing as it gets larger, but very similar. But it was always a no-no. You could not. Russia said, we don't want the so-called opponent or the enemy, let's use that term, we don't want them on our border. And they were right. They were okay. And yet they went in and they asked, with the United States, they said, put us into NATO, and everybody knew you just can't do that. They would never have agreed to it. This is before Putin. This is long before Putin. It was just a no-no. It was something that was never going to happen. So they asked for it, and they shouldn't have asked for it because it was, very insulting thing. Now, they could have asked for many other things, but the other thing they wanted to do is getting Crimea back, and, that was given. They had built, they were expanding everything and spending a lot of money, all because Barack Hussein Obama gave it away in one of the dumbest real estate deals I've ever seen.
But Mr. President, but you got the Article 5 protections, though.
So here's what's interesting about this. If Barack Hussein Obama did a really horrible real estate deal by giving Crimea to Ukraine, okay, then what kind of horrible real estate deal are you doing by giving Eastern Ukraine to also giving Crimea to Putin? Then aren't you doing the same thing? But even worse, I'm giving Eastern Ukraine to Putin. I'm going to outdo Barack Obama. So much of this is literally just like, it's bad when they do it. It's good when I do it. When I do it, I'm doing it. When I do it, I'm doing it as an investment for peace. When they do it, they're doing it because they're pussies and cowards. Also, what does he think is going to happen in the aftermath of this? Like, there is going to be a legal recognition of Crimea as a part of Russian territory. That's what Trump is spelling out here. So he's basically signing it off. So I don't even understand what he means by this when he's like, Barack Obama gave Crimea a bad real estate deal, very bad, not good.
Ukraine. So they're not going to be a part of NATO, but you still got them the same protection.
We're not, so they're not going to be a part of NATO, but we've got the European.
It just reminds me of like when Donald Trump was being prosecuted for withholding like classified intelligence and refusing to cooperate with the authorities. And then there was a subsequent independent investigation that took place with Mike Pence and Joe Biden, who had also taken some documents, right? But they did cooperate with the authorities immediately. And he turned around and was like, Joe Biden should go to prison. He took away documents. He should go to prison. Me? I'm being persecuted. I should never be in prison. You should be in prison for saying I should go to prison. Like, so much of Republican politics at this stage has basically gotten to, it's good when I do it, it's bad when they do it, and they should be punished for doing the same thing that I'm doing, if not the worse version of the same thing that I'm doing. I'm doing a much worse version of it, but they should be punished, and I'm actually good. I'm actually good for doing it. You should like that I'm doing it. That's it. Whether it be with Russia, whether it be with Israel, it's just everything. That's all it is. You do the same. Please point to what I do that is the same. Please. First of all, I am not the president. I am not the leader of the Democratic Party, nor the Republican one. So I don't even know what you could possibly mean here. You do the same, lol. What? Yeah, did I take 20% of Ukraine? Did I do that? Am I Vladimir Putin? Am I doing it? You lead the Dems, dude. Stop pretending. Yeah. Huh, I wish. No, you're not Putler. Good for me, not for you. You still have not actually mentioned anything. You have not mentioned a version. You have not given me an example of what you mean by this. You gave away Crimea, the apple of Ukraine's eye.
Nations, and they'll front load it, and they'll have some of them, France and Germany, a couple of them, UK. They want to have boots on the ground. Not in. I don't think it's going to be a problem, to be honest with you. I think Putin is tired of it. I think they're all tired of it. But you never know. We're going to find out about President Putin in the next couple of weeks. That I can tell you, and we're going to see where it all goes. It's possible that he doesn't want to make a deal. I always said, you interviewed me, Lawrence, and I think Charlie also. Lawrence, I hate to tell you, Charlie was about the first.
What is this? Why is everyone so upset that he gives all this historical context? He's doing the same thing that Hasan does, just to a larger audience. You kind of do the same about how every time there's a global event, you explain all this historical context just like Trump does. You think Trump is explaining historical context? You think Trump knows the historical context of anything? Also, Trump is not a political commentator. He is the president. He said, you went to a Diddy party. 59 months up. He's just bored. He wants me to fucking pay attention to him. That's
person
it.
in the world to endorse me. He endorsed me about a year before I ran. And that's why he called me this morning, sir, would you do an interview? And unlike Biden, I don't need permission from my staff, okay? You know? And then only to be told that I'm not doing it. But Charlie endorsed me about a year before, I think, and he puts it up on his site. You know, it's still not checked. It's still on his site. I endorsed President Trump before he even ran. So I always like a guy like that, I must tell you, you know. Now, Lawrence is going to be a superstar, but he was a little later to the game, in all fairness. Lawrence.
Well, it's a lot more crowded these days than it was back then.
It's pretty
but, Mr.
crowded.
President, what kind of assurances do you feel like you have that going forward and, you know, past this Trump administration, it won't be American boots on the ground defending that border?
Well, you have my assurance. You know, I'm president, and I'm just trying to stop people from being killed, Charlie. Look, they're losing from 5,000 to 7,000 people a week in that ridiculous war that should have never happened. If we had a normal president, not even a great president, if we had a normal president, it wouldn't have happened. But we had a guy that didn't have a clue. And they're losing, think of it, 5,000 to 7,000 a week. So even these guys, they'll say, okay, let's meet next week. I say, you can't meet next week. Next week, you're going to have 7,000 more dead people. You can't do that. You got to get this thing done. One of the things at the table was one of the gentlemen, who's a great guy, but he said, I hope I didn't insult him. He said, well, let's meet in another month or two, and let's see if we can start, making some. I said, a month or two? You're going to have another 40,000 people dead in a month or two. You have to do it tonight. And I did, actually. I called President Putin, and we're trying to work out a meeting with President Zelensky. We'll see what happens there. And then if it works out, then I'll go to the trilat and close it up.
Oh, that'd be good. Mr. President, did y'all discuss any land swaps yesterday? Because we've talked a lot about the Donbass region. And what was the feeling in the room? What did the other leaders say about this?
Well, they understand. Look, everybody can play cute and this and that, but, you know, Ukraine's going to get their life back. They're going to stop having people killed all over the place, and they're going to get a lot of land. But this was a war, and Russia is a powerful military nation, you know, whether people like it or not. It's a powerful nation. It's a much bigger nation. It's not a war that should have been started. You don't do that. You don't take on a nation that's 10 times your size. And you know, military experts look, if it wasn't for the greatest military equipment, we make the greatest military equipment in the world, and we gave them, whatever. They took probably a lot of money, too, but they had tremendous, they had the Patriot missile, which is the best in the world. All the equipment, we make the best equipment in the world by far. Everyone else is like nothing. So we gave them a lot of equipment. Now, with that said, the Ukrainian soldiers were brave as hell because they're fighting a force that's much, much bigger and, in theory, much more powerful. And, it's not like they've stopped. I assume you've all seen the map. A big chunk of territory is taken, and that territory has been taken. Now, they're talking about Donbass, but Donbass right now, as you know, is 79% owned and controlled by Russia.
Oh my Lord. This is like, I feel like Brian Kilmeade is not on this panel, because if he was on this panel, he'd be like pushing back and being like, sorry, Mr. President, sorry, Ukraine didn't, like, he has a more, like, he has a closer to the liberal attitude on Russia and Ukraine. So good thing they have only the sycophants on today. But I mean, he's over here talking about how, like, Ukraine started it, all this shit. Why do you watch Fox? Oh my God. Every day someone asks this question. One, because you have to learn what your enemies are saying. That's number one. Number two, they are interviewing the American president currently. Okay? Especially at a time when, like, unfortunately, the American president seemingly makes unilateral decisions. we just have to, we're at the mercy of this babbling old fool. So we have to understand where he's coming from, what he's saying. And also, last but not least, it is somewhat entertaining at times. Not right now, but
So
the trilat, more like unilat.
They understand what that
But Mr.
means.
President, what did the other leaders tell you? Because it seemed to be, this is unlike the first Trump term. There was great unity that was there, and we saw their public comments. But when you got them in the Oval Office, and we have this photo of you sitting at the Resolute desk, and all of these world leaders are sitting in front of you. What did they say to you privately? Because it looked like they're on the same page as you, sir.
Yeah, they are. They're very good people. They're very good leaders of their countries. And they want to get back to leading their country. You know, they're consumed far more with this than we are because they're right there. You know, we have an ocean that's separating us, right? Thing called an ocean, a big, beautiful ocean. And they don't. You know, they're right there. So they have to, you know, that's a different kind of a thing for them. When it comes to security, they're willing to put people on the ground. We're willing to help them with things, especially probably if you talk about by air, because nobody has the kind of stuff we have. Really, they don't have. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think if a deal is made, you know, famous last words, right? But I think if a deal is made, I think Russia's had it. They've all had it. And for a very extended period of time, I don't think there'll be a problem. But there'll be some form of security. It can't be NATO because that's just not something that would ever happen. They couldn't do that. So who would want that? I mean, if you were Russia, who would want to have your enemy, your opponent, sitting on your line? You don't do that. So it was always thought that Ukraine was sort of a buffer between Russia and the rest of Europe. And it was a big, wide buffer. Everything worked out well until Biden got involved. You know, when Biden gave them $100 billion right up front, I don't give them anything. You know, I don't know if you know it, but since I've been there, we don't pay. First of all, I made a deal to take rare earth. That's the equivalent of much more than the $350 billion that Biden got away, because I felt so foolish. It was so stupid what he did. And I was able to make a deal with Ukraine, and they were very nice. They have great rare.
I do think it's fucking annoying that, you know, just like with Biden, the leader of the nation is supposed to be a decent communicator. And Biden failed on that because he was too old. And Trump is failing on that because he's also too old and insane. So, like, there's not even a fucking moment of clarity here where he could just be like, because there are some things that he's saying, like he's trying to do the Mersheimer. He's been watching Mersheimer videos on YouTube. He's like, hey, Ukraine is supposed to be a buffer zone between Russia and NATO. It's unique to hear that perspective from an American president because NATO is your thing. Okay. But like he can't even get a salient point across because he's too fucking insane and too narcissistic to present anything.
Earth, among the best in the world, and we took much more than the $350 billion, and they were great about it. So we got that handled. But now we don't pay any money to Ukraine. They buy through NATO, because I got NATO to go from 2% to 5%. 2% when they didn't pay, 2% of GDP, 2% when they didn't pay, and 5% now they do pay. So it's trillions of dollars. So what we do is we make the equipment, the military equipment, and sell it at a full price. We sell it to the NATO. We sell it to NATO, and NATO pays us immediately. And that's the way it's working. And then NATO takes it and does what they want with it, because they really have the right to do what they want with it. But for the most part, they give it to Ukraine.
So President Trump,
so we're not losing. We're not like we were with Biden, where we're paying hundreds of billions of dollars out. We're paying nothing.
President Trump, during the meeting yesterday, when you decided to call Vladimir Putin, what was the reaction among the other people in the room, and what was President Putin's reaction to being brought into a phone call in the middle of your meeting?
Well, I think they expected it. I didn't do it in front of them. I thought that would be disrespectful to President Putin. I wouldn't do that because they have not had the warmest relations. And actually, President Putin wouldn't talk to the people from Europe. I mean, that was part of the problem. He So
you stepped out of the Oval Office to make the call?
They had no communication with the White House for years as people died. Years with Biden and his people. No communication. Putin told me. Years. It was years that he didn't speak to anybody from the White House. And it was a long time that he didn't speak to anybody from Europe. No, it's a fractured relationship. And when I came in, I always had, despite the Russia hoax, which truly was a very dangerous thing for our country, but despite that, I maintained a very good relationship. I mean, you saw that when he got off his plane, I got off my plane. There's a warm.
I think one of the craziest aspects of like all of these guys behaving in the servile way is that they also normalize what Trump is saying. They prove what Trump is saying is correct in the eyes of the broader public. Because all of these other European leaders that have routinely criticized Donald Trump, all of these European leaders that spent the last 3 years being like, Russia is a madman, Putin is a madman, we have to militarily defeat Russia, now have to turn around and be like, Mr. President, it was so amazing that you were actually the only person who could bring Vladimir Putin to the table. You were the only president who could do that. They said that yesterday. Okay? They said that yesterday. Now, we understand why they're doing that. They're doing that so that, the bag doesn't get fucked up. They know that this is the only language Trump listens to, responds to. You have to glaze them. It is what it is. But what's crazy about it is that ultimately makes them look fraudulent. And ironically enough, Biden had that same capability as well. Biden could have just as easily been like, we have to talk to Russia directly, instead of just casting that aside and having all the European leaders also take that position over and over again for 3 years. And then you cede ground to Donald Trump when he inevitably comes into power and then not only talks to Vladimir Putin, but also does so in a way that like offers no mind, no attention, no interest to the Ukrainian position here at all. None whatsoever.
There that you can't, there's a decent feeling, and it's a good thing, not a bad thing. People would say, oh, that's such a terrible thing. It's not a terrible thing. You know what? We've got the most nuclear weapons in the world and the most powerful. He's got second.
So can you describe for us how that happened? Did you just announce that you were going to go into the other room to make the phone call, and then you got up and left and then came back?
I think they sort of knew I was, at the end of the meeting, I was going to call President Putin, and President Putin expected it. And he was there. Now, by the time I called him, it was 1 o'clock in the morning in Russia. Russia's a big place. They have 11 time zones, I believe. 9 or 11, but I think it's 11.
But
think
Mr.
of it,
President,
11 time zones. That's a lot of time zones. So it was late. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, but he picked it up very happily. Sure, he works very hard, like we all do. And we had a very good call. And I told him that we're going to set up a meeting with President Zelensky, and you and he will meet, and then after that meeting, if everything works out, okay, I'll meet and we'll wrap it up. But it takes in this case 2 to tango. They have to have somewhat of a relationship. Otherwise, we're just wasting a lot of time. I don't want to be doing that I just want to end it. I want to end it. We're not losing American lives. We're not losing American soldiers. We're losing Russian and Ukrainian, mostly soldiers. Some people, as missiles hit wrong spots or get lobbed into cities like Kiev and towns. But, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven.
It is wild how much he glazes Putin. Like, it's truly. It makes... It shocks me. I'll be honest. Like, he does not have this level of respect for anybody, dude. It is crazy. It's not necessarily a bad thing to show respect to a foreign adversary, especially if you're pursuing the path of peace. But if you're a guy like Donald Trump and you're constantly undermining, bullying every single person around you, all of our foreign allies, and then you only have this kind of fucking glaze for foreign adversaries, it is interesting. It also doesn't make sense because, like, it's not like he's changing. Like, he glazes Xi as well all the time, and that's great. But it's not like it reflects in the policy-making side. He will glaze Xi while simultaneously actively doing everything he can to try to fight China's influence around the globe and fail to actually achieve that objective anyway. And I don't even know if there is any capacity to undermine Chinese influence around the world at this stage. So if you're going to be so nice and if you're going to glaze them, then why not cooperate, you know?
Evan, this will be one of the reasons. Well, I think I saved a lot of lives with India, Pakistan. They were going at it. The planes were being shot down. That was going to be maybe a nuclear war if I let that go. And I did that through trade. I was negotiating with both of them. I said, I'm not going to make a trade deal with you guys. You're fighting until you get peace. And I got them on the phone. I made a peace deal. And many deals, 6, actually 7. And then we took out the nuclear capability from Iran. That was a big one in those pilots and those planes. When people say, we had the B-2 fly right over President Putin as he left his plane. He looked up, he said, what the hell is that? That's a hell of a noise. We didn't make it environmentally friendly, okay? If that's okay with you guys.
Did the First Lady let you read the letter that Mrs. Zelensky wrote to her?
I purposely didn't. I did not do it purposely. It was given to me sealed, and I'm sure it would have been fine, but she gave a letter to Melania, and Melania told me it was absolutely a beautiful letter. So.
Yo. You think he's getting cucked? Putin, he's so handsome. He sent, isn't it beautiful? He sent a photo of himself shirtless riding a horse. I loved it. And she loved it too. We love it together. I sit in the chair. I watch. It's great. This whole time, I thought Melania was the one getting cucked. It turns out maybe Trump is getting cucked.
So I'm going to see it. She's sending me a copy, but I gave it to her yesterday, sealed. It's nice when you give something sealed. I don't like when things are open. I don't like it. So anyway,
Mr.
but it was a beautiful letter, I'm sure.
Mr. President, there was a lot of talk yesterday when we were watching this about what happens after your presidency. How can we ensure that this conflict, that Putin doesn't inch in closer or more into the Ukraine territory? Is there anything that we can do? Can our congressmen and women pass any laws that would involve Article 5? How would that be handled?
All you can do is make sure you get a good president, not one of these wackos like in California that runs the worst state anybody's seen, or that guy in Illinois who his family threw him out of the business because he was no good. Now he's running Illinois and he wants to run for president. He's got zero chance. Maybe Newsom has a little bit of a chance. I don't know, but it's hard to believe because his record's bad. But all you can do is hope you don't get that as president. We have a great bench, as you know that. We have great talent. And J.D. and Marco and Scott Bessen's been great, and Howard. They're all, we have such superstars. Remember this, take a look at the border. The border was a disaster. Millions of people were pouring through, open border. Within 2 months, it was perfect. And within now, every week, every month, they say zero people are coming in illegally. We were taking people from prisons all over the world, gang members, insane asylum, mental patients from the worst insane asylums in the world that dropped into our place. So now we have a very secure border, beautiful border. I built hundreds of miles of wall. Without that, we couldn't have a secure
But Mr.
border.
President, it's clear that you have operational control of the border. I mean, when the numbers hit 0, that is clear for the whole world to see. I'm curious.
3 months, months in a row.
Right, without new laws even having to be passed. But Mr. President,
now I'm doing something that I'm having such fun with because I'm helping people. I've made Washington D.C. Just an incredible place. In literally 4 days, I have friends that say they're going out to dinner. Did you see what's happening with the restaurants? They're bursting. They were all closing and going bankrupt. I mean, it would be. It would be great. There's a guy named Sean Hannity. He might take a very lovely young lady that he knows very well to dinner in Washington, and they don't have to. And she's sitting right next to you, by the way.
That's right.
But
Mr. President,
I don't want to get him in trouble, so I better explain exactly. We don't want any secrets here. 4 days. I have friends that say in Washington, D.C., just an incredible place. In literally 4 days, I have friends that say they're going out to dinner. Did you see what's happening with the restaurants? They're bursting. They were all closing and going bankrupt. I mean, it would be. It would be great. There's a guy named Sean Hannity. He might take a very lovely young lady that he knows very well to dinner in Washington, and they don't have to. And she's sitting right next to you, by the way.
That's right.
But
Mr. President.
I don't
Brother, he is so messy. He's so messy, dude. He's so fucking messy.
I want to get him in trouble, so I better explain exactly. We don't want any secrets here. But
That's exactly right.
that's the greatest relationship. I hope I'm not breaking any news. This could be the biggest. Hey, this could be the most important thing I said. But let me tell you, those are two great, Ainsley and Sean, great people. And when they go out to dinner, I don't want to see them get mugged. Now they can go out, they can hold hands, they can walk down the street. They're both superstars. I want to know who makes more money because she's got to be making a lot.
Mr. President, we're so happy for them. But on a serious note, Mr. President, when you had those world leaders, because this is the topic of conversation for the whole world, when you had them sitting in front of you, did they express concerns about the next president, that they're not going to get the same type of treatment, security guarantees? Part of the deterrent of future attacks is your peace through strength. So that they say to you, Mr. President, we're concerned about the next leader?
They did. We talked about it. You know, it is what it is. I could say the same thing about them. I said, supposing you get a terrible leader in UK or France, or, you know, we had Ursula there who runs the whole gamut. You know, we just made the biggest trade deal in the world. She's in charge of the Commission, the European Commission, and she's the boss. She was there too. That was really an incredible array of people. But you know, they say that actually maybe even more with regard to the economy. We have $17 trillion being invested in the United States and committed, and numbers that nobody's ever seen for AI plants and for this and for that. And we're taking in trillions and trillions of dollars. That's why we're doing so well. Plants are being built all over the country. Our country has gone from a
Dude, for sure. For sure. That's definitely happening. Things are so good. If only he just keeps repeating this over and over again, then maybe people will believe it. Now, of course, there are some people who do believe it. Those people are insane. It's a cult. But I think this will consistently diminish the number of people in Trump's base, like the Trump loyalists. It's virtually impossible for them. It's virtually impossible for them to not recognize. Drop that Addy, bro. What? Listening to Trump is one thing, but if your wallet is hurting, you're going to feel that, okay? And as long as Trump keeps saying, "Oh, it's so good, it's so good. So many incredible opportunities for Americans to work like good paying manufacturing jobs." If it doesn't happen, and people are eventually going to go, "All right, dude, you fucking lied to me." And every day, there is always going to be another person that decides for one reason or another that this shit is not working for them.
Head country 1 year ago with a
You cannot, just like the Brandon administration tried, you can't just like wish cast away the impact of inflation or the impact of not having viable, well-paying job opportunities. You can't do that.
this country in the world. And every one of those people said it yesterday. They said, in 6 months, you made this the hottest country in the world that we are. We have $17 trillion coming in. And they said, well, what happens if you're no longer president and somebody comes in and cancels the tariffs that we've invested hundreds of billions of dollars on building these plants, and now you have some anti-business person come in? I said, well, life is full of nasty little surprises, but I don't think it's going to happen. We have a great bench, and the bench is really talented. You see a lot of the people, and I think you're going to get great people in government.
Well, President Trump, we want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. We know that you have lots of other wars around the world that you need to end, and that's more important than anything. So we appreciate you joining us this morning.
No, thank you very much,
Mr.
Charlie.
President.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's so funny he does not want J.D. Vance to be president. Yeah, that's going to happen regardless, though, whether he wants it or not.
What?
I mean, it might not happen, but, like, J.D. Vance is eyeing that top spot as aggressively. Your thumbnail looks like you got Trump on the phone. I do. I've been talking to him directly. He's been communicating with me in my dreams.
It was a day of consequence, a day of achievement, and yet also a day which left a sense of great uncertainty ahead. After Putin in Alaska, came Zelensky to Washington, but not alone this time.
So here he is, 6 months after that Oval Office meltdown. He's back at the White House for a truly unprecedented gathering.
The American president, the great disruptor, was on this day the great convener. Never before have the leaders of key European nations all been here in the White House at the same point and at such short notice. They weren't in the room in Alaska. They needed to dominate it this time, to influence what happens next.
It's a great honor to have you here.
Due to the tariffs, imported manufacturing parts are going to be a lot cheaper. Could it now be that Trump tries to use those rare earths to secure supply for manufacturing in America for a much lower price? Wait, what? You think Ukraine is going to make up for the refinement and procurement process of rare earth minerals that is a damn near monopoly in the hands of China? Like, do you understand how the fucking what the runway on something like that looks like? First of all, due to tariffs, imported manufacturing parts are going to be a lot cheaper is wrong. That's just objectively, it's the opposite. I'm not dunking on this person, by the way. Make no mistake. I'm just trying to clarify that this is just incorrect. Okay. Don't assume that I'm like shitting on this person and or pile on this person at all. I think this is just like someone who is a little bit confused. But tariffs are an entry tax. So things that American middlemen are importing into the country, the price of that goes up like automatically. They have the capacity to, I guess, eat some of those costs and lower their profit margins Okay. That's part of the reason why you haven't seen like gigantic, you haven't seen like enormous inflation so far. But then also on top of that, you're talking about like a massive, massive amount of runway to build, develop refinement and procurement strategies in Ukraine that still would not be a part of the domestic economy and the domestic manufacturing part anyway. So it doesn't really do anything for American interests. So it just doesn't make sense.
And with the required flattery too.
I really want to thank you, President of the United States, dear Donald, for the fact that you, as I said before, broke the deadlock.
Something is changing, something has changed thanks to you.
In relation to a conflict which has gone on for 3 and a bit years, and so far nobody's been able to bring it to this point, so I thank you for that.
The leaders were here for 5 hours, public moments and private talks, all after Zelensky's return to the Oval Office.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. If I can, first of all, thank you for invitation and thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war. Thank you.
This time, the tone, the vibe and the result were a world away from that day in February.
Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
And this time, a suit too for Zelensky. He's learned that style here is as important as the substance. And on that substance, a key commitment from Trump, the outline of one at least, on American security for Ukraine.
There'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good.
One thing I don't see brought up is fatigue of keeping up with the changes. Where I work, we try to get ahead in November to reduce costs. After all the changes that destroyed that work, it became easier to just raise costs to cover what may happen.
They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
Trump was not willing to say that in February. We do not know any of the detail or how Putin would react. But with a map in the Oval Office too, there was talk of territory. What is Zelensky prepared to negotiate? Again, we don't know. But the other major achievement, in the middle of the talks, Trump spoke by phone to Putin. I called President Putin and began the arrangements for a meeting at a location to be determined between President Putin and President Zelensky. After that meeting takes place, we will have a trilat, which would be the two presidents plus myself. But we know now with this president that the course can change fast. Achievements now can amount to little later. The meeting was unprecedented. The tone has shifted. But the endpoint, still impossible to chart. Mark Stone, Sky News at the White House.
Oh, this guy's back. Mr. Maps. This is the English Harry Enton.
So why are these
Holy Toledo! The war in Ukraine is waging, and the battle lines are drawn. It's not good. I haven't seen territorial acquisition like this since Tsarist Russia.
security guarantees suddenly leapt up the agenda for the international leaders. Now, if Putin is genuinely serious about bringing the war to an end, one of the things that's going to be a key part of the negotiation is land. The other one is security guarantees. Now, President Putin has been very clear so far that in any security arrangement post-war, Ukraine can't join NATO and also Ukraine must disarm. But it is worth remembering that's purely his pre-negotiation position, in the same way that President Zelensky has been very clear that he doesn't want to cede territory, and the West has to work our way around it. Now, it's quite possible that during the Alaska summit that President Putin alluded to President Trump that he might be prepared to consider some sort of security security guarantees. I think what's more likely is when the European leaders all got together around Washington, that they turned around and went, we've got to have a coherent line, because whatever happens, if we're going to get to a peaceful settlement, we've got to look after this part of security. Now, what form will they take? Ultimately, they have to be credible and they have to have teeth. One of the challenges that Ukraine faces is they've got at least 1,000 miles of frontline border, even more if you include the border with Belarus. And let's give an idea of the scale required for troops on the ground. If you were to put troops 60 feet apart, which doesn't appear that credible as a deterrence, you'd need 100,000 troops to man the border. Now, you've got to give them a break, so they've got to have 4 months on, 4 months off, and then 4 months training ready for deployment. So you actually need 300,000 troops to be able to man that. Where would these come from? Well, the harsh reality is, even if you use the whole of the UK army, about 30,000 deployable, that's about 10%. There's potential for France to provide another 10%, but it's pretty clear Italy wouldn't provide any. Poland is worried about its own national security, and there's no way that America wants to get itself bogged down in Ukraine. And therefore, where would the rest of these troops come from? It's just not a credible option. And besides, it would bog down NATO in Ukraine, and that would leave a green light.
Maybe if it's maybe if it's Sky News explaining the thing that I was explaining to you earlier, some of the people will be more interested in understanding how fucked the situation truly is and why this is not a likely outcome here.
Available for people around the rest of the world. It's not the only way that you can deal with security guarantees, though. There are several others in addition to boots on the ground. One of the other options is a no-fly zone or a no maritime zone. This plays to NATO's strengths because NATO air power is an order of magnitude better than the Russians. The Russians have been badly bruised. This will be a very credible deterrent. Another way, of course, that America could get involved is around intelligence. Clearly, American intelligence is a game changer. The big advantage is
there is functionally no difference between a no-fly zone and boots on the ground. It's, again, it goes back to the exact same issue, which is nation states and their air forces that are either under the nuclear protective banner of NATO or are nuclear armed nation states themselves going into direct war with Russia, which is also a nuclear armed nation. Both of these options lead to mutually assured destruction. Both of these options are also incredibly difficult to pass through. There is no domestic appetite for this. Everybody speaks a big game about defending Ukraine until it comes down to actually militarily defending Ukraine. Think about it. America is a warmongering nation. And one of the worst, one of the hardest things to sell has always been a permanent occupation in the Middle East because you got troops coming back in body bags. It's just nobody wants to see that. People don't even want to give Ukraine money and weapons. They think why aren't we using that money on ourselves? Now imagine if you're also not only doing that, but also sending military. They're just not going to get on board with it. I don't think there's any amount of this is actually for the good. This is actually for the betterment of or defending Western Europe or whatever the fuck. I don't think that's going to convince people. Especially at a time when I see a lot of animosity from younger generations towards their own governments because they recognize how shitty their circumstances are. They recognize that there's no more hope left. And it's like, why would I fight for this country? I'm reminded of those interviews that those man in the street interviews that they do with British youth, where they'll be like, no, I wouldn't fucking defend England in a military, in a situation where there's war. Why would I do that? England won't even defend me. Fix the fucking trains.
that they could continue to support Ukraine, but not be overtly antagonizing Russia, because Russia wouldn't know what was being provided. And likewise, logistics has also been mentioned as a way of ferrying stuff in and out of the country, potentially providing munitions and the like. This is
you got multiple decades of austerity and a crippled welfare state structure. Good luck. Good luck getting people on board.
more of an enabler than anything else. But whatever the solution is, and it's going to take a lot of negotiation, it's got to be credible and got to have teeth. The other thing that they'll be looking at is land. Of course, this land swap or whatever has been talked about, but it's all got a little bit quiet on that. And I think that's really good news, because ultimately what President Putin wants is probably the whole of Ukraine, but certainly the whole of this Donbas region. What President Zelensky wants is to liberate some of this land. And that will be the really difficult conversation. But if Russia is really serious about bringing this war to an end, ultimately he will need to have a break. His forces need a break, the equipment is tired, and his economy is on its knees. So one of the things that if I was a military advisor to Putin at the moment, I'd be saying for the next 3 months, push hard until the end of the fighting season, until winter falls, and play all of these negotiations long, these bilateral and trilateral talks, put a few weeks between them and play it out until you get to the end of the fighting period and hope to put yourself in a really strong negotiating position. And that's why I think there's so much effort in the international community at the moment. I'm very positive that there is at least some progress towards a peace. There's a glimmer of hope that there's progress to be made, but I have to say at the moment there's very low expectation of any significant advances anytime soon.
I just don't know why Ukraine and European leaders came out of that meeting making it seem like there was some good discourse happening, you know, some productive stuff happening. I don't get it. I don't know if they're keeping up appearances or if there's like commitments to continue doing a flow of weapons to Ukraine. I don't know if it's like Trump lying to them directly to their faces, being like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a security partnership and I'm going to get Russia to commit to a security partnership. I can explain to you, being Ukrainian myself. Explain it to me. I don't get it. Because, like, Trump, literally, when he's talking to Vladimir Putin, is like, you're the best. You're the GOAT. You will take all of Ukraine, okay? I will give you whatever piece of Ukraine you want. And then Trump is, like, basically saying, I will not do a ceasefire because Putin doesn't want a ceasefire. But then, seemingly, yesterday's meeting certainly came across like they were happy with whatever Trump told them. So there's just like something that doesn't make sense.
Yes, that is one of its results. Territorial changes are often an essential component of conflict resolution. There are many such examples.
Just sounds like TikTok voice, TikTok AI voice.
Мы никогда не вели речь о том, что нам просто нужно захватить какие-то территории.
I would like to emphasize once again that we have never talked about the need to seize any territories. Neither Crimea nor Donbas nor Novorossiya as territories have ever been our goal. Our goal was to protect Russian people who lived on these lands for centuries, discovered these lands and shed blood for them. They founded cities in Crimea and in Donbas, such as Odessa, Nikolaev, many others, cities, ports, factories, plants.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Tuesday that peace talks over the Ukraine conflict should begin at the expert level and move forward gradually, step by step, through all the necessary stages. Speaking at a press briefing, Lavrov stressed that any negotiations must be carefully structured, starting with technical discussions among experts.
Okay, so does that mean Ukraine gets some Russian territories? Yeah, no, of course not, dude. What the fuck? No, obviously not. I don't know why they keep saying territorial land swaps, because it just doesn't. It don't make no sense. Trump is lying to Russia, lying to Ukraine. He wants to finish it ASAP to achieve his Nobel Peace Prize or whatever. I mean, yeah, I I don't know if he's lying to Russia. I'm going to be honest. I think he's more in a listening position when it comes to Russia. But I do think he's lying to Ukraine, and I think he's lying to the European partners, I guess. He's lying to himself, and he definitely does want a Nobel Peace Prize. I just don't understand why why other people don't see through it.
Before advancing to higher-level political talks, he emphasized that progress cannot be rushed, highlighting Russia's preference for a systematic, staged approach to diplomacy. Lavrov's remarks come as international pressure mounts for renewed dialogue aimed at ending the ongoing conflict, with global leaders...
Не отказываемся ни от каких форм работы, ни от двусторонних, ни от трехсторонних. Президент об этом неоднократно говорил. Главное, чтобы любые форматы 1+1, 1+2, в том числе включались не ради того, чтобы...
Wait, they just gave up. They gave up.
If yesterday's extraordinary
They just gave up translating the rest of it. That's crazy.
Events in the White House are perplexing the rest of us. Try being Ukrainian, told they must consider giving up land.
Lavrov is bad cop. Any Putin-Zelensky meeting has to be prepared extremely carefully. Russia will only agree to a deal that respects its security interests. The foundations of Ukraine's recognition as an independent state would disappear if it aligns with the West. Yeah, I mean, this is literally... This is what they've been saying. Maybe they'll say, like, Ukraine has to be in the Russian periphery, and in exchange for that, we take LPR, DPR, and then you keep the rest. We don't just go in further. I don't know. I don't fucking know anymore.
And in exchange for vague security guarantees, like MP Lesia Vasylenko, they need so many questions answered.
Who is going to be there backing Ukraine in case Russia decides to revisit their imperialistic plans and strategies, and in case they want to restart this war of aggression?
For many here, there is an uneasy sense of déjà vu. In 1994, in the Budapest Memoranda, Ukraine agreed to give up not land.
Major L. Major L for Ukraine with the whole nuke situation.
But its nuclear arsenal in return for security assurances from Russia and other powers. Putin tore them up with his invasion of Crimea in 2014. And once again...
Biggest L of all time.
With his full-scale attack 3.5 years ago.
Mr. Yeltsin, Mr. Clinton, Mr. Kuchma, and John Major.
Veteran diplomat Yuri Kostenko helped lead those negotiations in the 90s. Trusting Russia now, he says, is laughable.
President Trump says that he believes President Putin when he says he wants to stop the killing.
It's not true. It's not true. Russia never, it's my practice more than 30 years. Russia never stopped the aggression plans to occupy all Ukraine. And I think that Mr. Trump, if he really believes Mr. Putin's, I think it will be a very big mistake, Mr. Trump, very big mistake.
This week's whirlwind diplomacy must be set against the backdrop of Ukraine's sacrifices over 11 years of war. They have seen their hopes dashed many times before.
Unlike in other European capitals, no one here is talking up the chances of success that lie ahead, most people reserving judgment instead. The one grim certainty they can be sure of course, is that the war goes on, with many more lives at risk.
Ukrainians are desperate for signs of progress, but too wary to hope for too much.
We still feel not sure, not confident, and we do not really believe that for any good ending for us. We are all a bit tired of the missile attack and the drones, and we all aware that most probably it will take some time again for us.
I felt the disappointment. I remember that in any of the previous meetings, nothing changed after them, so I don't expect much.
While the diplomacy moves on in an unclear direction, events here are depressingly predictable. Hundreds of drone attacks every night and Russian advances on the front. If Putin really wants this war to end, he's showing no sign of it. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News in Kyiv.
Russia continues to hammer the country with missile and drone strikes, even as talks continue. Holly Williams has covered this war since the beginning, and she's once again in Ukraine speaking with people about the latest developments.
For many Ukrainians, it's difficult to believe that Vladimir Putin really wants peace. A swarm of Russian drones killed at least 5.
I like to close my eyes and imagine them talking about Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu sometimes, just to see what like accurate coverage would look like on that issue. You know what I mean? Just closing my eyes and imagining them going, Israel seemingly is not interested in real peace. Here we are interviewing Palestinians in Gaza who have withstood a 22-month genocide. They are starving because Israel is starving them.
5 people in an apartment complex yesterday, according to Ukrainian officials. Rescue workers tried to save this baby girl, but she didn't make it. Volodymyr Zelensky has survived nearly 3.5 years of war as Ukraine's leader, but he may now face his biggest challenge. If Zelensky makes territorial concessions as part of a ceasefire deal, permanently giving parts of Ukraine to Russia, some here will see it as weak or foolish. Too many people have suffered and died, said this woman in Kyiv. Did they die for nothing and will give away land? But if Zelensky doesn't make concessions, he risks alienating President Trump again, as he did back in February.
You don't have the cards right now.
So, of course, it hurts to see that Russia is not being pressured, that nothing has been done to Russia.
Alexandra Ustinova is a member of Ukraine's parliament.
Do you think that President Trump understands Ukraine and this war, or is he somewhat naive?
I think that President Trump still believes that Putin can be negotiated. And we, having all of these years of negotiating Vladimir Putin, do not believe a single word he says, because he always lies and breaks his own word.
Ukrainians know that international agreements have failed to protect their country in the past, and some fear it wouldn't be any different this time, even with security guarantees from the US. Vlad.
All right, Holly, President Trump was pretty adamant that a meeting between Zelensky and Putin is imminent. Are we on the brink of peace here?
Well, look, none of the players can afford to simply reject President Trump's efforts and his optimism. That would be political suicide. So they have to do the diplomatic dance. They have to play along, Vlad, willing or not. Now, for his part, Vladimir Putin, I think, is thrilled to have the red carpet rolled out for him by the US. But it seems unlikely that at this point he really wants to end the war. After all, Putin has called Ukraine's democratically elected government a, quote, illegitimate regime.
All right, the clock is ticking. Holly Williams in Ukraine for us. Thank you, Holly.
A little tan, you good? Huh? Great.
Thank you for being on.
I can't believe they're thanking him, dude.
President Trump.
Okay, French President Macron says any deal must allow Ukraine to live in peace. Yeah, no shit. Okay, but are there any hardline stances that he's going to take after fucking sucking Donald Trump off
was
earlier?
Overheard on a microphone talking to you, and he said, quote, I think he wants to make a deal.
We saw the hot mic yesterday. He was talking about how, like, Putin's going to do it for me.
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. What went through your head when he said that to you?
I think if, at the end of the day, if we have a deal which is compliant with this long-standing and robust peace, this is a great news. And your president, indeed, is very confident about the capacity he has to get this deal done, which is a good news for all of us and can break this, I would say, this daily killings.
Bro, he's literally just repeating what Trump is saying, which is so crazy. Where was this energy a year ago? Where was this energy 2 years ago? Why did it take for these guys to completely engage in a role reversal on positions that they held firmly? Like Macron went from, I'm going to nuke Russia, I'm going to send troops to Ukraine, to Donald Trump is actually a brilliant a brilliant negotiator, and he's really bringing Russia to the table. I can't believe it. It's like, you guys could have brought Russia to the table straight up, especially with these conditions. If the conditions for bringing Russia to the table is just like literally giving them everything that they wanted, you could have done so 3 fucking years ago with significantly less death. Especially because right now, I want to stress something here, okay? Right now, Ukrainian interest or Ukrainian sovereignty is not a factor in their considerations. Okay? It's not. Because Ukrainians want ceasefire, but they don't want territorial acquisition, right? They don't want Russia to permanently annex Ukrainian territory. Okay. So if they don't give a shit about that now, that means they wouldn't have given a shit about it 3 years ago. So why didn't they do this 3 years ago without so much more bloodshed? It doesn't make sense.
Which are the responsibility of the Russian aggressor. So I think it's a great news. My point, and this is why we've worked so hard during the past few months, and we need this convergence, is to be sure that this deal is not detrimental to Ukraine and Europe. And all of us, we want a deal and we want a peace deal. But we want to make sure that this peace, and so this deal, will be something which will allow the Ukrainians to recover the country and live in peace, to be sure the day after this peace deal that they will have sufficient deterrence power not to be attacked again, and to be sure for the Europeans that they will live in peace and security.
We're